So welcome, and I'm really excited to be here. Luis actually was going to be here today, but he is impacted by some of the potential evacuations in the Bay Area. So I'm Toddi, and you guys, I think some of you know me, or if you don't, I've been, kind of a jump-in host on the TLD cast for a couple years now. Always excited to be here. It's like so much fun actually for me, and I'm really excited today to actually have Rubina Halwani with me because she's going to talk about some amazing things that we need to know if you're out there job seeking in this field, because there's some little known secrets about job titles out there. So I'm going to go ahead and dovetail it to Rubina and let her get started, and you can give us a little bit of your background as well so people know who you are, and we'll go from there.
And here we go. So this started out organically for me. And is everybody able to hear me okay? Are we good? Okay, good. Thank you. So this started out organically for me. We're looking to hire 2 more instructional designers for our team, and we started having discussion amongst ourselves about the different roles and responsibilities that IDs need to have that we were looking for. And we got into a bit of discussion on, the multitude of things that instructional designers are asked to do. As you may be aware if you've seen job announcement recently. And so I started looking on Indeed and out on ZipRecruiter and some other job sites, and started learning that there's so many different job titles. And I kind of knew that in the field when I've been looking for work in the past, and I wanted to see if there was a non-exhaustive list of the different job titles out there. I found a couple of articles that are written, and then up here I did post those links. Yeah. And I will share those with you in the chat at the end of this. So if you want to come back and see them, you're more than welcome to. But they were smaller lists with maybe only 7 or 8 listings. And I was finding a lot more out there in the job postings. And so I started compiling my own list just here on Google Drive. On an Excel sheet, and I decided to write down the job titles and description of responsibilities just to kind of see what's written out there and how it differs from job title to job title. So I found that fascinating. The one that we see that is the most prevalent is the instructional writer or instructional designer. And if you are currently looking for work, this will be the one to look at to copy down all the different job titles that appear for you that you can look for in order for you to find work also. So an instructional designer is a little bit different from an instructional writer, and I shared down the different responsibilities that were here. So instructional writer is usually asked to do a little bit less than the designer typically. They script things out, they show things back to a team, and do very, they're oriented in content development. And then these are associated titles that I found that have very similar descriptions for the instructional writer. So if you're looking to be an instructional writer, you can also look for these other job titles like content developer, script developer, technical writer, and creative content writer. There are probably several other names out there, but after this many, I decided to move on.
It's a lot, actually.
Yeah, it is. But it's really interesting, especially for this technical writer one. I would not have thought originally that this fits in ID. I've seen this in years past about business writing and things in those realms, but now people are using that in instructional design type of opportunities as well. So if you're looking for work, take a look at technical writer for instructional design opportunities.
Yeah, I've also seen instructional writer. I mean, it seems to be all over the map. I've worked with teams before where we actually had dedicated tech writers that wrote the content, and then that dovetailed into the design phase after that. So
exactly, I think you bring up a good point too, that if you're seeing an instructional writer position, it's a good assumption to understand that you're going to be working within a team environment, and that the project will be broken up into different pieces. So you're going to be having a content element, and then you're going to be reporting to or delivering that work to other members of the team that are going to put the rest of the project pieces together. So that's a little bit of a tell if you see that title, that you're going to be in a group role. Right. So that's kind of interesting. Then a step up is the instructional designer. This will most likely be at a higher level of salary than the instructional writer role, and a step level up in terms of responsibilities that you're going to have to take. And I have a compiled list of a lot of different roles, and so I'm not going to go through all of these responsibilities. What I'll do after the talk is to share a link with you so that you guys can go ahead and look at this, keep this, and compare things for yourself, and review the different responsibilities to kind of get an understanding what will be expected of you and what you feel that you're capable of doing in these different type of jobs. And hopefully they really help you figure out where you want to be. So the instructional designer role is something that we are all familiar with. You need to know your some understanding of adult learning, some understanding of authoring tools, working with different people again, perhaps conducting the SME interviews, needs analysis, everything from on the ADDIE list, essentially, for me to see. And then this is where my team had a really good discussion trying to figure out, are we looking for an instructional designer or an instructional systems designer, which in a lot of places, they mean the same thing. In some places now, they mean two different things. And what I've learned is that the difference from instructional designer to the ISD is that they really want you to know the LMS and work with the LMS and put the courses into the LMS, deployment, and all of that. So it takes a little bit of different skill set to be able to do that. And just if you're curious, we ended up announcing an ID position and an ISD position so that we can have both, because that was just what we wanted for our team. Next, we had your one-off e-learning developer or e-learning designer role. How does that differ from instructional designer? In a lot of a job announcement, it's about the same. But now they're starting to shift to say, we want one person to be the instructional writer or the designer of the content and work with the SMEs and do all the needs analysis and research and content development. And then we want a different person developing the design that was approved already from the other folks that came before it. So if you're looking at Addie as your model for your process, this is coming in the third letter, the developer part, and they want you to be the developer, which means you would not have as much input to give in the design. You're really more expected to just execute what was in the analysis and the design in the development.
And you might have more technical skill sets as well.
Exactly.
As part of media. Yeah.
Exactly. And so you want to make sure when you're in an interview, that you really do ask, what is the role? And please define or talk through all the responsibilities so that your assumptions meet their assumptions and you're both on the right page.
Right. Because
we still have so much overlap of jobs and descriptions, and it's to no fault of anybody out in the field, folks in the HR that announce these jobs positions. They all have a different understanding of it. And so what I tried to do is parse this down as much as I could, but it's still out in the field can be interpreted differently. So just be aware of that.
Right. And there's not really a defined core competency.
Exactly.
For what we do. And that might differ depending on, what tools are available in an organization and, what the culture says and all kinds of different things.
So many different things. So it's really important to kind of know these things, that they're out there, they exist, that some job titles match, and sometimes they're so completely different from what you thought the job would be and what the client is seeking. And then for you guys to be able to talk those roles and responsibilities when you have your interview. They will be asking you questions for all of the things that they have in their wish list, which we know includes everything and the kitchen sink. I always say that. And then you can also ask them questions about, okay, when you see this list of responsibilities that are just pages long sometimes, what's feasible, what's realistic, what is it that you can offer, where your strengths are, and then where they may have to shuffle around some of those responsibilities that might be too much for one person to do. And that's the hardest conversation to have. And we can talk about all of those interview tricks and tips later. Just kind of keep it in the forefront of your mind.
Right.
So we had things like senior instructional designer. Let's say you've been instructional design for several years, and a question that pops in my mind is, okay, what's next? I don't know. I had no clue what other roles were out there, so now I do. A senior instructional designer is expected to do a lot more quickly and be extremely resourceful. That's what I think are my 3 takeaways for that one. Whether there are money limitations on the project or in the company or whatnot, a senior instructional designer is expected to be able to complete a training project from beginning to end without much input, a little bit more autonomy, and just know how to raise up issues if there are issues and solve problems. So understand that as you grow and the more that you're able to do, this is a role that you could look into, whether you stay in your place and ask for a raise or ask for a different title,
Right. And
or
that was
go
a
somewhere
question.
else and do the same thing.
And the question and answer, that was actually one of the questions that we had posted through TLD Cast, is if the role is ambiguous or the title that you hold is not necessarily in a really good fit, does it make sense to request like a title change, and is there an advantage to that? I know in the past I've asked to have my job title changed because it didn't fit what I did at all. And in the instructional design role, I was doing much more technical work than my job title actually indicated. So
it is always a good thing to self-evaluate what you've done through the years and see if that matches that job announcement that you applied to so many years ago. And if you feel that you've grown and developed, and you can use this to describe how you've moved from one role to the next, it's all fair game to ask for a switch or a bump up.
Right.
Who can say no to a better salary also?
Right.
So you can track your growth and trajectory, and you don't have to necessarily go into a different type of role. You can escalate vertically within your own role, which is, I think, really cool.
It is, and it's good once in a while to sit down and kind of take an assessment of the different things that you're doing in your role. You know, and actually somebody asked in the question and answer whether, you know, how many people do facilitation in it as well, which, you know, if I think back to the different things that I was expected to do, and I might have been expected to project manage, I might have been expected to, you know, like do testing, you know, testing of the end product. I mean, like, there's just so many different things to do. I think it's really good to just step back every now and then and say, okay, how many different things am I doing in this role? And, you know, would that support the idea to hire another person, you know, based on what the budget that the management has set for the department. But, you know, it's always a good idea to get, you know, a good assessment of what you're doing and what the team is doing. You know, formally, I mean, I think in almost every organization that I've been in, we always apply a RACI. You know, so we look at the roles and the responsibilities, the people that, you know, need to be doing these things, and who needs to approve them, and who needs to just be aware. But I think sometimes even within the L&D organization, we don't necessarily apply that same RACI to what we're doing internally. You know, we apply it across the organization, across stakeholders. So, interesting stuff.
It is very interesting, and I love the insight that you're bringing to this as well, too. In places where you have the financial wherewithal, resources, and a supportive team and a supportive boss and all of those things, it is, I would think what you would want to do is make that expected of yourself, to make a list of all those things, those extra asks, compile those together, and then at a good time, talk those things up and see where that leads. I think you owe that to yourself and your career. If you want to build up in your career and move up and ask for a raise, these are those things that'll help you kind of get to where you want to be.
Right.
And so it's wonderful. Or, as you also mentioned, assess it. If you're starting to do work you really don't like, you're perhaps iffy with, be honest with yourself, be honest with your boss, perhaps that you need more support or specific support in a specific skill set that you can hire for and add to your team. And hopefully you have that bandwidth to be able to grow and do that. And that's how those discussions happen, essentially.
Right.
So,
or in a lean company, maybe you even borrow that talent from somewhere else in the organization for specific projects.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
very, very cool stuff. So we have e-learning developer, designer. It goes up in the tiers in the rankings. This is also something that goes up in the tier. I tried to make the list graduated or elevated as I go through it, as best as I understood it, coming from where I am. So then there's a learning experience designer. Instructional designers can argue that we're all learning experience designers, but perhaps it's time for you to have that title, especially if you're doing all of this kind of work. So that's something that you can ask about and go into, and it's a nice job to look out for if you're planning to move as well. We have a learning strategist. I have not met somebody that is a learning strategist, but I know that there's jobs out there. So go ahead and look this one up and check out the responsibilities and apply. I just love that we're growing so much that people are creating new job titles that didn't perhaps exist before. Exactly. Or at least where I'm coming from, I have not heard of this one, but now I would love to look it up and see if I need to apply for it at some point. I love my current job. I love my role. I love my folks. So I'm not moving anytime soon. So this is not for me. This is for you. So let's just.
Right. Well, that's the value of this, is to give people, some more thoughts in terms of, what can they be looking for. So I think this is back to like 2009, the role that I held for iRobot, and I was the counterpart to the government DoD training specialist. Every time a contract comes out, they have the person on the government side, and then they have somebody on the commercial side. And so my title was learning analyst. And I remember thinking, I don't even know what that means. I know what I'm supposed to do, but I don't know if I understand my title very well. To me, the concept of analysis essentially means that we're going to really be assessing what we do ahead of time, which is part of what we do as part of a job anyway. We look at that initial assessment and analysis to determine how we're going to deliver, but it also suggests that somewhere on the back end we're going to be doing more analysis to determine whether or not the learning was effective. So, and I don't think it fit anything that I actually did. I was more of a project manager. And how do you resolve that? That's actually one of the questions in here, is how do you resolve it? Especially if you're like leaving a job, you probably don't have any power to resolve that, I guess, when you're exiting a role, maybe while you're in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I've come across that before in my experience as well. And then that's when you decide, while you're still with that company or organization, are you able to get to where you would like to be and have that job alignment and have that support and be in that environment where you can head in that direction, and then stay with them and grow with them. And if you feel that you're just not getting there, you're frustrated, or you're being asked to do so many things that you were not assigned to, or the responsibilities just got too big, where you could be doing the exact same thing, but the role is increasing for more than just one person, and they're not going to hire somebody else because they're strapped. That's when you kind of have to make some decisions in your life. Perhaps you have to look for a position outside of the company to continue your success and your happiness and your growth and whatnot, and then you just move on. And that's what helps determine that kind of a thing.
It's easier to define something like that in the next place than it is, where you are. Not suggesting that anybody won't move on, but I know that, I've been able to better define like my titles and my my actual work better at the onset than I might have been previously able to do in another company. So cool. Yeah, and we have some questions in here too, but
Sure.
I'm really excited. Just keep going here when we get to our questions. So.
Sure. And I don't want to bore everybody out with all of this.
This is great stuff.
Thank you. And I'm trying to share little tidbits of things that I know for these positions. I think the most that I can tell you about these types of roles, as you can see, they're very similar to each other. Let's say you're in an organization that has identified a problem, but they can't figure out any kind of training solution to even suggest. So typically when you start at the lower level roles and you're more of a first or second year instructional designer, let's say, you're going to be handed those projects. And then as you move up, you're going to be handed certain discussions on, we've noticed this happening. We don't want these folks doing this. We actually want them to do this. And how do we do this? We're not sure. So maybe if you can help us, and this may mean more of focus groups and trying things out, spending more time in that analysis role to kind of identify the problem and then come up with a training resolution that works for that specific problem, and then kind of go forward from there. That's what I am best assuming goes in these roles. And if you like that kind of a thing, these are just right in your market. You can also be an e-learning consultant, a freelancer, somebody on your own 1099 kind of a gig, which is perfectly fine. In the field, it's about half. A lot of folks are freelancers, and I love that they figured out how to get clients and be their own training entity and find projects that they believe in and that they want to work on. It's a wonderful thing. For folks that might be newer into instructional design, it may be harder for you to jump into this kind of a role, but it's something that you could probably go into. Let's say you're at a company for so long and you really feel that you've done as much as you could, or it's just not going in the direction that you would like, or whatever reason, you need some change in your life or in your schedule or whatever.
Right. So
you can become your own consultant and kind of grow with there.
Yeah. And somebody mentioned that they add the word consultant to all of their internal job descriptions, which really does reflect on kind of the scope of responsibilities within the company, that you're acting in a consultative way, which I think is interesting. So I mean, that concept of a consultant could be internal or external. I know. So this is funny. In one of my roles, we had learning consultants within our company that actually aligned to the business units and became kind of more embedded with them to really learn the business, to be able to bring that to the table on the learning side, which is interesting. So, and we of course had to acronymize the title and call it our LCs. So.
Interesting. So what is the R for?
Well, it was LC, Learning Consultant. So, it was an aviation company, so, aligned with DoD work, and so everything had to have its own acronym. So, yeah.
Acronyms galore in lots of places, especially in ours, all over the place. And so I know in my place especially, there are consultants in exactly as you've defined, in-house as well. And to think of yourself as a consultant really kind of just, I think, elevates yourself and garners a little bit more prestige and respect, so that you could be on the same level as other folks that are there. A lot of times and in a lot of spaces, I'm sure a lot of people will agree here, folks just kind of dump, and for lack of a better word, on instructional designers and feel that they are a peer, your client, your stakeholder, which for all intents and purposes for you, they are, but they're feeling that their training developer is down here. And what your job is in any role is to kind of get to this position where, or this position, if you can see, where it's a mutually respectful relationship, and they really come for your expertise as much as you rely on theirs for the subject matter, for the resources and the other parts, that the actual design and development of the project should be in your expertise. That's your job, and hopefully you guys are meeting at par for that.
One of the questions is somebody says that they see a lot of overlap with ID responsibilities, and that they've been called a project manager. So again, then that's almost sort of a status level as well. So
yes.
The bigger question on this was, do you think that's a limitation in applying for an ID role? I have my opinion on it, but what do you think about that?
Very good question. So I have that as well here. I called it the e-learning project manager, although it's probably going to have so many different names in so many different places. But a project manager for L&D, essentially.
Right.
It is a role. I've worked with lots of project managers before also. So they don't get their hands in and on the design, typically, is what I've seen. They're more of the liaison with the SMEs, with the stakeholders, making sure that the timeline stays on track for the project, that you're able to actually deliver everything that you need for the project. If it's an agile project and has to stop in between, they're the ones coordinating all of that. They come in on projects if, let's say, you're getting closer to your deadlines or it's mission critical. They may have been instructional designer before, moved up to this role, can apply those skill sets into this role, but they don't necessarily have to be an instructional designer. I like it better if they are, because they really have a little bit more empathy and insight, and the kinds of discussions that you can have with them are a lot more engaging and informative than an outside type of project manager that's just more aligned in the business realm, the marketing realm, and just kind of understanding timeline, deadlines, and project end, because that's what they care about. If you're going to ask for that extension or that deadline or that clarity, you may or may not get accepted for that. So it is a job out there. I don't know if I would want to be in that position, but there are a lot of people who do. A lot of people like that. It's a powerful role to be in, stressful, but again, see what you like to do. If you're that person that really does care about the timeline and going from, you know, your A to E and finishing and publishing and pushing that stuff out, this is something that you probably want to work toward.
And I think it gives you a more strategic view sometimes of a project. You know, there's tactical aspects, obviously, of being a project manager to get, you know, very tactical things accomplished. But I think it comes with that mindset that you understand the soup to nuts, end to end of a process and the vision for it, too. Because you have to, you know, if you're in that management role, you're probably reporting that vision back to somebody on the top level. So I would answer that question. Yeah, I don't think that project manager would ever limit you from getting any kind of a role in instructional design. That's just my thinking. It's probably a big bonus.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, so moving on from there, where was I? There's several different more, and I'll just go through them real quickly. This is the grand poobah for me that I would love at some point, or
Me
maybe
too.
just, call yourself on the side anyway. I am the Chief Learning Officer. That's such a cool title, and I love it.
The CLO.
Yes, exactly. So, or a Director of Training. I've seen that in training and development on the business operations, training and stuff. L&D is its own thing. T&D is its own thing. So I see these titles and roles very much similar, but for different spaces. It's, and so we've got that after, you put in your 20 years, you can maybe work towards that, or you're probably somewhere above you. Let's say if you're an earlier instructional designer, or answering to the CLO or director of training that started the project, that initiated it, that gives the vision and the mission for your group. So just kind of know that's out there. Learning architect is a newer role that I've heard in the past few years. Also something that works with other partners, other people, helps put together learning projects together.
And is that role aligned to developing the learning product, or is it aligned to developing some of the solutions, like the technical solutions? I'm just curious.
Oh, interesting. I've seen the learning architect be very closely aligned to, where is it, a learning experience designer?
Okay.
Or a learning architect. Those two roles are very synonymous. Cool. And why did somebody announce it one way versus the other way? That's more in HR. But know that those titles are out there for very similar roles, working with the design and the delivery of a training.
Okay.
So that's what I've seen, yeah.
Cool.
And then you have your LMS Administrator, which I think if you're in instructional design, that's a great thing for you to do. That's a great path for you to be in. If you're an LMS Administrator, that's a great thing for you to do. That's a great path for you to be in. If you're doing both, which I know exists and is out there, bless you.
Exactly.
That is the best I have for you, because there's such different skill sets. This is really programming. You've got to know HTML, perhaps some Java, perhaps SCORM stuff and API and all of those fun acronyms, and be able to build the LMS, work with the LMS, print out reports, track your metrics of different courses that you have, and a whole slew of other responsibilities. It's its own separate job. And even in our team, in our group, we have discussed that, and we've actually kind of parsed that out and really respect each other for what each person's doing. One can't live with the other. You need both, but for one person to do both things can be very tricky and difficult depending on the LMS system that you're using. So yeah, keep that in mind.
And I've been called the LMS owner across the company, like, a product owner, so basically the person that, is the first person to get yelled at if something goes wrong.
funny. Well, you own it, so it's your puppy, so it's your fault.
Exactly.
Exactly. They know who to blame also when they see this. Then you have your trainers, which I think is one-off from instructional design, but related in the same thing. You may be creating the content. I think this is more in delivery of content that's already created, to be a trainer and or a facilitator. Those used to be live in-person training, but thankfully for COVID, now it's all online and we all love it. And nobody has any problems in it whatsoever. But just keep that in mind. If you want to do this, this may be a virtual job at this point. And it may be something that you love to do or want to go into. And if you do, please look up jobs in this one. It's a fabulous career path also. Perhaps you don't want to be in the nuts and the bolts of creating the curriculum or the design stuff, but you're okay to present it to other people. And, you know, perhaps you were a teacher and in class and you come into instructional design, you could either do on the back end, I would say, is where ID lives, or on the front end as a trainer, which is perfectly fine.
Right.
And a great career field.
Well, and actually, Kristen just mentioned that there is a question in the queue about facilitation. And so I feel like, you know, that's kind of a blended role in some places as well. You know, we may be expected to facilitate when that might not be officially part of our job description as, you know, a curriculum developer. Or, I mean, and I'm curious, actually, and I didn't put this in the polls, but I'm wondering how many people have facilitation as part of their job duties, you know, that they're expected to go out and do the virtual training or expected, you know, in the in-person days, do the in-person training in addition to developing everything.
Oh my gosh.
I'm curious. I have done that in the past.
I'd be scarily curious. I'd be like looking at it like this. Because you can do it. You could be your one-man band. But oh my gosh, when these roles and responsibilities are listed out and they're so different, just to share our experience, because of COVID, we closed down a lot of operations, face-to-face training, and we had to start delivering online and or pausing or cutting grants altogether because there was no way to deliver the content otherwise. And so our department started coming to us with these requests like, we're not sure if you can do this, but can you do this? We have this content and we don't want asynchronous training. We want to just be able to deliver to a class. Can you help us do this on Zoom or Hangouts or whatever? And we said, yes, we have that skill set. And yes, we can help you with this. And we ended up keeping those departments, those grants alive and working. And this is something that if you're really looking for work, I would say doing something in this role would be very hot right now in the job market. That you can go out to school districts, especially independent schools, if you'd like, all sorts of government organizations, and just toss that out there and ask people if you need help doing this stuff, you can come in and help.
Absolutely.
And train the trainer even. There's a lot of opportunity in this. Training the trainer, I'm going to add that in there because that should totally be in there. Is where you're not even teaching the students. You could be teaching a bunch of trainers that then go out and train the students.
Right.
So that's also a job if you just didn't know that. That's there for you.
It's definitely a government model to train the trainer so that they can replicate training programs across an organization, in geographic areas and things like that. The funny story is my husband, who's an engineer, has also been in this training role very recently because of COVID, and had to figure out with a department of people who were programmers for an aviation platform how to skill up and get certified on a contract for all of the software that they needed to know how to use to develop, and some of it was a classified delivery.
Oh, wow.
So I would listen to him on the phone, and I would pass notes to him as he was talking to the instructors that he was bringing on, and just say, okay, first of all, here's some things you can do to utilize WebEx, in ways that you can get the engagement going, and I do consult with Cisco, so WebEx is something I know a little bit about. And that's their tool of choice. But who knew? I mean, like, his title's engineer, but he actually managed the delivery of all the training across the company to meet this contractual need. And I keep telling him it should be a case study because it was really fascinating how they pulled this off. And it was also a little bit frustrating for me because I would hear them talk about things and I want to chime in, and I don't work for them, so all good though.
Been there, done that. I've chimed in for lots of people this past summer, especially trying to go from live in person to online, especially teachers. Bless them, we love them, we need them, they're so vital. And they don't know how to deliver their lessons that they've created in years past, and they have them and they're beautiful and they know exactly how to deliver them inside of a classroom.
Exactly.
And this thing is, this COVID experience is shifting the way we deliver instruction to a kindergartner that cannot type and cannot turn work in this way, and has no idea how to interact with the teacher or the video online.
Exactly.
So these are the types of things that you could be looking for, or even ask. Go out and be proactive and ask. It's a hot space right now, and
building the engagement is a big piece of that too. And so I keep waiting to see like engagement in an L&D title.
It should be totally. We should add that in there.
Yeah, I mean, we can find it out ourselves, right?
Specialist or something like that. I bet there's going to be more titles as we go on in the next few months, even. And I would be happy to add those in here so that we can see them.
Or a transitionist. I mean, like, because that's what a facilitator is in some of these cases, is someone who helps transition in these days that learning that someone knows and loves so well to be an online delivery that can be just as educational for the person on the other end, whether they be in grade school or whether it's an adult learner. But it's a skill for sure.
It is a skill, and working with teachers also. Another skill, working with the school districts, another skill. A lot of folks are either technologically averse or, for lack of better words, they don't know this, they're a little bit shy, and they need to understand how to deliver the instruction so that it's meaningful and engaging, and they can figure out ways to grade assignments that they just haven't been able to do in the past. We've never been in this position in recent times before. So go ahead, go out there and
do we have technologists on the list here?
I'm sorry?
Do you have technologists on the list? I'm just curious.
Instructional technologists. Oh, that's a good one. I should totally add that in there. I know. I've had it about like 5 extra job roles from this talk.
Broadening it. And if we can define it and come up with the core competencies, then we will be golden, and you will have a really awesome reference document. I have a feeling people are going to be asking you for this, by the way.
For this one, I know, by the end of the talk. keep it so that it's open also, so that we can
Okay.
add things in, apparently, because it seems like it is growing. Just really quickly, since we only have a few minutes left.
Yeah, it went by fast, huh?
Sure, yes, but I hope that this was engaging for everybody else and helpful for everybody else. I was truly fascinated by all of the different things that I found, and I just wanted to share it with you guys.
Yeah.
So I hope you find this very useful and meaningful for you guys. And please let me know. I would just love to hear if there's other job titles to add to this, like the instructional technologist and engagement specialist. We're going to write that one together after we're all.
I know, crazy. Well, I mean, there are books written by, folks in this industry right now that are aimed at engagement. I mean, and that's, a big piece of this. Of course, a couple of them that I know of have written books a couple of years ago and have redefined or revised those recently based on where we're at now, because there's just not that opportunity to be in person. So, it's a completely emerging landscape, which is the exciting part about what we do, right?
Cool.
And I think people don't necessarily know to look for certain keywords, even in the job descriptions, that might pull something up that they weren't necessarily looking for, something that just hint might not have as many applicants.
Yes.
That's the real value, I think, in understanding how many different crazy titles and words are associated with what we do. So,
yeah, this is like a key takeaway from both of us and anyone here involved with this talk. I know Lewis also wanted to be here for this and was just, when I shared this with him initially, he was just like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. This is really nice. It's going to help a lot of people. And that's exactly what I want to do. When I see, like on LinkedIn, especially, people are looking for work for 2 months or more in our field. And I'm going to say, are they only looking for ISD jobs?
Right.
And 200 people are applying for that.
Sure.
And there's this whole world of other job titles. If you know how to do your search terms right, you can find a job that fits you, that you love, that is probably very similar in the responsibilities anyway.
And are you typing in the right keywords? SCORM,
exactly.
HTML5, which is kind of a word that we use. Just even those terms can help bring up things that, maybe are titled in a way that nobody's finding them. At least that's my hope for folks who are looking out there. But yeah, we do hope it's really useful too. I know it's really useful to me, even just to think this through and think, how can we as a group and as an industry start to maybe align these a little better or define them a little better. It's kind of a mishmash moment.
Right. And so I first wanted to share the mishmash and kind of look at all of this junk that's here and say, what belongs where? That's where I think I want to take this afterwards, and maybe talk again to say, oh my gosh, what are we doing to people in these roles, and where should we head, and what is fair and what is not. And so these are some remaining roles. You can check out graphics, multimedia, e-learning project manager, of course, and then related roles that are probably held by other folks that you interact with if you're in instructional design on these projects. But you could probably turn into some of these roles. You can maybe be a subject matter expert, especially like you were saying, your husband in engineering, he's a subject matter expert in his field. He could totally look for jobs within that and find a very good career path to go on with that. Your stakeholders, pay attention to who those folks are, what their job roles are, and see if that's a direction or path that you want to go into.
Yeah. I was going to add one more here for you too, and
sure.
Change management. I So my team in Denver that I worked with worked a lot with the change management teams in order to socialize the idea that, you know, something was going to change in the workflow. You know, we would create training, but we also wanted to get that messaging out there as well. So that's a really valid terminology. And may lead you to find something that, you know, is just exactly the job you want to do, because that's kind of a blend of communications, and sometimes you know, training's involved as well. So
yes, absolutely. I think that's a lot of folks find their jobs because there was a change, and they need to now train folks to do things. So thank you for your time. I don't want to go over, but this will be available for everybody when Lewis deploys the recording for this.
And then I also want to let people know, you know, our Slack channel is available to you guys on the tldc.us page if anybody wants to, you know, request to join in there, because we have resources in there as well. You know, it's a free option for people who want to join in. And so, Rubina, I'm going to actually share your LinkedIn profile if that's okay.
Sure. Thank you.
I so make sure you're good with that, because you may have, you know, 50 people connecting today, which, you know, is awesome. I think it's
that would be nice.
But definitely, you know, I mean, I think it's important for us to continue this conversation. I'd actually like to come back to it again, because I think it has the potential not only to help us kind of define out what we do, but, you know, to help others find roles in this field, which is, you know, it's fun. I love it. I think you love it too. We want to keep sharing, you know, the options and learning and development, because I think most of us really do love what we do. So
I do. Thanks.
Excellent.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so
Lewis,
much.
I hope you're well. I see him on the chat.
Yes,
I hope the fires disseminate and go away, and everybody's safe, and everybody is safe during this time, wherever you're at and whatever you're going through. So,
well, everyone, go out and be safe, and you know, keep in touch with all of us in this space, and you know, let us know what you want to know more about. So, and have a great day.
This is
Take
wonderful.
care.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.